Welcome to another episode of Scouting for Growth, where we explore the bold ideas of visionary leaders shaping the future of risk and resilience. I'm your host, Sabine VdL, and today we are diving into a topic that has never been more urgent: business and climate resilience in the face of rising operational risks. Over the past decade, the United States has seen a staggering 78% increase in power outages nationwide. For American businesses, these disruptions are more than just an inconvenience. They represent a massive $150 billion in annual losses, from spoiled inventory to lost productivity and wages. Yet, traditional business insurance often leaves companies exposed, offering little or no compensation for short duration outages that can still devastate the bottom line. Enter the world of parametric insurance, a market that is redefining and rapidly gaining traction as companies seek faster, smarter, and more adaptive ways to protect themselves. Unlike conventional policies, parametric solutions pay out based on real-time data and pre-agreed triggers, empowering businesses to recover quickly and flexibly, whether that means paying employees, repairing storm damages, or replacing lost stock. Our guest today is Mike Gulla, CEO of Adaptive or Adaptive Insurance, a pioneer in this space. Mike and his team are redefining what it means to be resilient in an era of climate uncertainty and operational volatility. We will explore why now is the time for parametric and adaptive insurance, what inspired the creation of Adaptive, and how emerging technologies like AI, big data, and cloud computing are transforming the insurance landscape. So, if you are ready to discover how the next generation of insurance capabilities and products are going to help you small businesses not just survive, but thrive, stay tuned for a conversation that promises to challenge the assumptions and spark new ideas. Welcome, Mike, to the Scouting for Growth podcast. Hello, welcome. Wherever you are in the world, I would say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm really thrilled today to be with Mike Gulla, CEO and co-founder of Adaptive Insurance, which is headquartered in Austin, Texas. Adaptive Insurance is one of those platforms which is providing a lot of companies with parametric insurance, and we'll dive into what parametric insurance as part of this conversation. A little bit about Mike. Mike has a great background in underwriting and product management with 2 decades of experience at companies like Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Nationwide Insurance, Esurance, Hippo Insurance, and Verisk. I'm going to stop there because I would love for Mike to tell us more about his career and what got him to co-create and co-found Adaptive Insurance with his colleagues. So Mike, welcome to this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me, and let's get started. Tell us who you are and what got you to build Adaptive.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. And thank you so much for having me on. My background for the last 20 years, as you said, spans the entire, insurance ecosystem. Started my career on the East Coast. I've had tremendous opportunity to live and work all over the U.S. for a number of very good companies, which you mentioned, mainly around the underwriting and product development space. I've had firsthand knowledge of dealing with claims, starting out with Hurricane Katrina all the way back in 2005, all the way up through my career at Hippo and with Verisk. I started Adaptive in 2024, early 2024 was when we founded the company, really on this mission to help businesses build financial resilience in the face of climate and how the world is changing on a daily basis through the use of parametric and parametric-style products and other data assets that we can use to help them build that financial resilience as the future changes.
So let's talk about resilience, right? And
Sure.
today we hear a lot about driving operational resilience. And I understand it's no longer just about disaster recovery or business continuity. In today's volatile market and landscape, it is about enabling companies to adopt, to absorb, to adapt, and rapidly recover from a wide range of shocks, be it climate related, technology related, even supply chain related issues, right? We are seeing right now, Mike. So, what frameworks or governance structures do you see as most effective for embedding resilience in the core of an organization operations?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sabine. I always break it down into essentially two separate buckets that we focused on with adaptive in the early days. The first was around knowledge, right? The consumer needs knowledge to understand what are the things that are ultimately going to impact their business. There's so many things a business owner and a consumer need to think about when protecting themselves, whether they're starting a business, how they're going to get their revenue, what types of products are they going to have. So many different things that they need to think about on the insurance side of what insurance products they must have. For us, the knowledge aspect is really understanding what the impacts of the environment around them are ultimately going to have on their business, right? What type of weather are they going to be exposed to? What type of business interruptions are likely going to impact their business over time? The second piece is around speed and data, right? How do we use data and how do we use technology to drive speed for that business to make an educated decision after an event takes place? This is a great benefit that comes from parametric insurance products, right? Because they are very, very quick. And I know we'll get into discussing that in more detail as we go through, this discussion. But the speed aspect for us is huge because a business owner needs to be able to make a decision very, very quickly after an event occurs. And when you combine knowledge with speed, it helps them make a better decision for their business that hopefully will see them stay in business much, much longer than they would have if they didn't have those two things combined.
Yeah. So we talk about operational resilience. What about climate resilience? I mean, despite the high frequency, the high severity, right? We see $1 billion weather disaster. I read 27 of them took place in the United States in 2024 alone. And many businesses still are relying on outdated risk models and lack sophisticated tools to project future climate risks. What for you are the most critical blind spot, weaknesses you observe when you talk to companies out there, when you look at their current approach to protecting themselves against climate resilience or climate risk to drive that resilience, especially when you look at uninsurable risk, Mike?
Yeah, it's interesting. When we interviewed customers at Adaptive in the early days, the thing that fascinated me more than anything else was the lack of technology that's used by consumer businesses. Right? There's a lot of technology that's being implemented into the consumer space these days, but a lot of business owners, they don't have access to the types of technologies that they need. I tell people a funny example of a group in Austin that owned a number of restaurants that were still using the weather owner, the CEO of the company was using the Weather Channel app on his cell phone to maintain what was going on with the weather
Yeah.
manually throughout the day and how they were planning an indoor or outdoor seating at a restaurant, which to me was just made no sense. I couldn't understand knowing how many tools exist in that space for them to have access to. So it became this idea of, okay, the education, right? This is where I go back to knowledge. They need to understand what they're exposed to. The other piece of knowledge is understanding the tools and the assets that they can actually get access to that can help them perform their business more profitably, help them actually build resilience against the next type of event that's ultimately going to impact them, whether it's a climate disaster, whether it's some sort of other type of business disruption. Putting those tools together and creating an environment where you can combine insurance products and combine these technical products together into one thing that creates an opportunity for the business to build financial resilience is something that was core to Adaptive's mission right from the get-go.
Yeah, I understand. And let's go to the last topic I really wanted to cover when we think about resilience, which is power outage. With 78% increase in power outages over the last decade and $150 billion in annual losses just in the United States, what are the most important lessons organizations should take from recent disruption, Mike? How can they move beyond reactive measure to become super proactive and actually build with the technology which is available now that resilience?
Yeah, so power was really interesting for us, right? Every business in the United States understands the need for power, right? I could go into any small business in this country and ask them what happens right now if the power goes off.
Yeah.
It's very easy to understand. They know what revenue they lose. They can't use their payment systems. They might have food product that's going to spoil. The issue that becomes very, very apparent with power outages is even if you build resilience, even if you have a backup generator, even if you have a battery backup for your business, the impact of grid outages, right? Not an individual outage at your location, but something more larger scale, right? That impacts a portion of a city or the portion of a town. It still has a significant business interruption on your business because even if you have a backup and you've invested in that technology, if the stoplights are down in the city, nobody's driving to your restaurant for dinner today just because they think you might have a backup generator or whatnot. So it's important for the business to have those investments and have those things because maybe now they didn't have food spoilage, they didn't have damaged equipment, their lights were still on, they were able to manage their day, but they still had a financial loss, they still had a business interruption for their business. And that's the piece for us where when we talk of knowledge and we talk about resilience and we talk about the understanding of what technology can do and what insurance products can do, our focus was combining those things together so that we can really help that business build financial resilience. So they know how likely is it that they're going to have an outage? How long is that outage going to be when it does happen? Is it going to impact their busiest day of the week, their slowest day of the week, or maybe a day they're not even open? All of these things are part of the conversation to understand what type of product they need, how long the coverage amount or coverage time frame is that they need, the limits that they need. All of those things will factor into those decisions.
So we already talked about your distinguished career, Mike, and all those great companies you have worked with. So what was the really specific event which says that, you know what, I need to change something in our industry and I need to build a new approach? You know, what led you to create and build adaptive insurance and your focus on parametric?
That's a great question. So I'll say first what really locked me into insurance and why the insurance industry is such an amazing thing. I worked the Tuscaloosa tornado storms that hit in Alabama in 2011, which were devastating to the area. And when you see firsthand on the ground the type of damage and destruction that can happen, and when insurance companies come in to do what they do best, right? Major severe damage, severe loss, and they come in and try to rebuild people's lives. That's what the insurance industry was designed for. Now, what we've seen over the last 15 years, as climate has shifted, the locations in which people now live compared to where they used to are in areas that are more prone to different types of weather events, whether they're catastrophic or not, that could ultimately happen. So the focus for me has always been throughout my career on building new products, creating new opportunities to use insurance for good, find ways for new products to help both businesses and consumers protect the assets that they've invested so much effort into. And what we've seen is the industry as a whole has suffered from just how fast things have changed, right? You have these major catastrophic losses that people focus on very heavily, like the wildfires that hit California that were horrible, or the hurricanes that hit on the East Coast last year. These are terrible events that cause massive upheaval in the insurance space. But when you look at a small consumer business, that's actually not the thing that causes a business to go out of business, right? In the most part, like it's a very small percentage of the reasons that businesses go under as a catastrophic insurance event, right? That ultimately happen that cause them to go under. They typically go under what we always refer to as death by a thousand cuts, right? It's all these little micro events that happen throughout the year that impact their bottom line and their revenue generation. So what we're looking to do with these types of products and with parametric products, and the reason why I got so excited about what we were designing at Adaptive was, how do we actually create something that can get in the hands of that consumer immediately after an event happens? It's likely not going to make them whole, right? It's likely not going to pay for all of the business loss that they have. But if I can put some level of financial capital in the hands of that business owner, they can make smarter decisions in the days that are the most chaotic right after an event occurs against their business.
You know, I often hear that, and I've seen this year, that parametrics, it must be the year of parametrics, right? It's getting so much traction
It
amongst,
is.
consumer businesses. I've seen it as well in Europe, but also, among our industry and the carriers, right? I would say the incumbent players. So what, what trigger makes parametrics so interesting, exciting, right now? What makes it the right moment for parametric insurance to go live and to be actually become mainstream across, I guess, the industry, but across markets as well?
Yeah, so I'll give you an analogy that I've used with a lot of folks. I look at parametric insurance as being to the insurance industry what streaming services were to the cable and movie industry 10 to 15 years ago. When they first came on scene, they already existed. Nobody really understood them, and nobody thought that they were going to take off until the consumer realized that it gave them selection. It gave them an opportunity to choose different things that they cared about. I didn't have to go and buy a 500 channel cable package anymore. I could buy Netflix to watch the 3 shows that I now want to watch. What Parametric does is a very similar thing. It creates a new product opportunity for the consumer to have access to a different type of coverage that can specifically focus on something that might impact their business. I will tell every business owner, you should absolutely have a business owner policy or a general liability policy or a property policy, depending on what your business is. We're never gonna circumvent those coverages, right? They need to be there, and this is where the insurance industry has done an incredible job in building products that have lasted for 200 years in those types of industries. What Parametric does, again, comes back to allowing the business owner to actually feel like they're making a financial investment into a product for their business that can get them access to capital very quickly. To me, this is why parametric is becoming a big thing right now, right? The technology is there, the data is there, the connection of resources and the connection of technologies on systems now has enabled parametric to start to take off. And it's funny, Sabine, we've seen the same thing over the last 12 months. And just going into some of the insurance season events that are coming up, the amount of parametric discussions for adaptive this year versus a year ago
Yeah.
when we were begging to be talking about this, now everybody's talking about
Everybody's
this.
talking about it, exactly. And I found that shift fascinating, but I guess we had some events, and we also have some situation in some states where we need to find new products and we need to find new ways to protect the consumer in those states. So parametric insurance is known for rapid and transparent payout, as you said a moment ago. So share with us some examples. Share with us some great stories of customers of yours who have had their life transformed by implementing and using parametric products.
That's a great question. So we are very new to the market, so we don't have live stories yet of customers of ours that have had this happen. But I do know of many instances where it would have come in, and obviously this was the focus for us on how we can help businesses. And you can look at this from a number of different examples, from catastrophic losses to just everyday events. The one I'll use that is probably most close to us because we have a number of customers in Minnesota. There was a large SCS, a severe convective storm, that rolled through Minnesota earlier this week that knocked out power to a major swath of the northeastern part of Minneapolis. And you had a number of consumers that had no power. We did not have any customers that were impacted in those zones, yet our technology allowed us to know exactly where those outages were occurring, exactly when they started, how long they were projected before the power was going to come back on. So let's assume in that instance, we would have had a customer that was in one of those affected areas. The difference in a traditional insurance transaction of a claim that typically happens after the event, after the loss occurred, for us, if we had a customer in one of those zones, our claim process actually would have already began. We create what we call a claim candidate every time there's an outage event so that we know every consumer that's in our book that might be impacted by that event. We communicate to them that we know what's going on, that we know an event took place, and that we're monitoring it. So there's transparency there of knowing that the parametric product is now the trigger started, right? Because parametric is essentially an if-then statement. It's if this happens, then I get that. So for us, it's you buy a product that's a 12-hour outage. Once the clock starts, we're monitoring it. And once it hits a 12-hour outage, you get paid whatever the coverage limit was that you ultimately, that you purchased when you bought the policy. So, it's interesting to see how fast the technology has grown and how accurate we've been able to get with monitoring what's taking place in real time. And I'm very confident as our book grows and grows and grows into many tens of thousands of customers, being able to create that experience and that speed will continue to happen because everything is technology first. There's no archaic processes and things where, we can't be proactive about our claims experience with our customers.
Yeah, I mean, you have an advantage with having built a greenfield proposition where you actually are using the latest technology, and technology is key for data from artificial intelligence, things in the cloud, because yourself, you
Yep.
are doing also power outage. All this allows you to be far more responsive to the customer. But what I can hear as well is you are enabling transparency, but you're also building trust because the client really understand how the parametric product is going to operate, I guess.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So we talk parametric, but the market is also looking at new innovation, partly in the distribution space, partly when we think about embedded insurance. And so when we start looking at this landscape, over 30% of transaction within 5 years, and the market, and with market projections surpassing $700 billion by 2029, embedded insurance is another area of innovations. How do you see these trends, such as distribution, embedded, combined with parametrics, changing the way businesses and customer leverage coverage?
Yeah, so I'll share what gets me most excited about the embedded distribution, and then we can talk about, if we have time, the things that get me most concerned about parametric products, because there are a lot of things in a regulated industry that we need to think about.
Yeah.
Embedded is the way of the future, right? This is the consumer experience that everybody wants now. When you go to Amazon and you buy a product, you expect to see the 8 other things that they recommend that you buy with the product you just went on to purchase. So, the piece for the insurance industry is how do we embed and actually work together to provide a better consumer experience and attach our products into an experience that they really want for their purchase experience. For us, with Power, you could think of a million different embedded distribution opportunities that we could have. Going back to the example, Sabine, that I mentioned earlier around business interruption. Right. Even if somebody is proactive and somebody has solar panels on their business and they have a backup wall battery that can keep their business up, they're still at risk of a business interruption where it would make sense for them to invest in that technology for all the things that technology can protect against. Short outages that only last 3 or 4 hours where it doesn't really impact them. But they should still be mindful of the events that can go beyond that where they're going to have a financial loss. Technology, AI, and data has allowed us to give those answers in a much faster way, which makes it easier for you to have those conversations. And when you think of an embedded product like a parametric, it works so much simpler than a traditional insurance product. It's much easier to embed it because the consumer can understand the value proposition much better than they can from a business owner policy that might have a 50-page contract of different things that you need to go through, where on a parametric policy, it's much simpler, right? There's still contract, there's still language and other things, but the driver that really drives the payment on that policy and how that policy works is typically much easier for a consumer and a business to understand.
Yeah, embedding an offering in somebody else's value chain, or embedding a product in a different industry, we say retail, telecoms, automotive is a way forward. And as the industry start learning about what partnership truly means, and therefore building digital ecosystem, what roles do you see for technology companies, brokers, non-traditional players, when we start looking at building innovating product and services, partly for you, actually, Mike,
Yeah.
and adaptive?
So I'll touch, Sabine, on the fear piece of when I think about when it comes to new technologies and new products, right? I've spent 20 years in the insurance space, and we work in one of the most heavily regulated industries in the world. In the US, you have over 50 jurisdictions that regulate each insurance product at the state level, right? That can get into layers and layers and layers of different regulations you need to pay attention to. Regulators serve a very, very important purpose for protecting consumers across this country in insurance, and they have done that very successfully for a long time. And the advancement in technology, the advancement in insurtechs, the advancement in all these new products, it's very difficult for a state entity or a state-run organization like a Department of Insurance to keep up with all that change. So the piece for me that we've been focused on from the beginning, at least with Adaptive, and I've done this throughout my career, is taking a compliance angle first of making sure that what we're setting up is legally okay for us to do. We're taking it from an approach of understanding what we can and can't do, because you can't just go and run the mile. Like, we got to get into this into little increments of understanding and how we take the product to market and make sure that we do it the right way. So the excitement piece is that technology can move as fast as people want it to move. And AI is now making things move at a speed that scares even technology developers, right? You have databases getting deleted from companies because they plugged AI into, like, crazy things are happening with AI. And these things make regulators a bit skittish about what technology companies are trying to do. So the piece for us is focusing on working with partners that we can trust, partners who've been around the industry for a long time, folks that actually understand the importance of making sure that you set up the product the right way, that you set up the relationship the right way, and that you have everything documented in a way that you know what it is that you're doing. It's not just throw it at the wall and see what sticks. It's actually come up with a valuable plan of action and execute that plan of action against the guardrails that you set up on day one. And then you can rinse and repeat and do that with new partner and new partner and new partner over time.
Yeah. And so when you also think about all this innovation, right, all this automation, and you already mentioned the magic word of artificial intelligence, right, when we start looking at digital platforms and all the capabilities which are available for us, how do we ensure, you as at Adaptive, but insurers in general, how do they ensure that they maintain that human touch, that building a trust amongst customer and carriers, brokers, all the value chain, especially when customer are dealing with emotionally charged events such as climate disasters or business interruptions.
So the most important thing is to always remember that a human is at the other end of that transaction. Regardless of how much AI you use, regardless of how much technology you use, at the end of the day, at the end of almost every single insurance product that exists is a human being. It might be a business, but it's still run by humans, right? You have to understand that the person at the other end of the transaction is somebody that is still going to need empathy and still want to be consoled when something terrible happens and wants to deal with the physical human. AI is an incredible technology. As my CTO and co-founder always says, AI can take you 60 to 70% of the way with the technology product, but then you still need the professional to get you the rest of the way. And that last 30% is the most important piece, because that's where everything lives that AI doesn't understand. That interaction with a human and the feeling that somebody has when their business goes out of business and they have to lay people off or fire another person. Like, these are things that AI, I don't think, will ever be able to fully understand because of emotional intelligence. But what it can do and how it can help a business actually understand what their risks are in ways that we can speed up the claims process and make a better experience for that human at the other end of the transaction, knowing that we're using it the right way. The biggest piece for us, Sabine, is always making sure, as I said, that the professionals that come in at the end to make sure that things work the way that they're supposed to, you have to have those people on your team. You need to have insurance professionals. You need to have technology professionals that understand laws, that understand what it's like to work in a regulated environment, that understand what it's like to deal with human beings on a daily basis, that have been through a horrible event that they just want to make right, and they just want to be able to make a decision at the end of the day. Those things are super, super critical. And that's not just me saying that from Adaptive's perspective. I would say that to any startup or any insurance company that is, that's getting into this space and looking to do parametric products or any other product, in the space today.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I know that you are using a lot of technology. We talked about the fact that Adaptive, built from the ground up, greenfield business using some of the latest technology. We talk about big data already, artificial intelligence, cloud, real-time triggers, right? And event verification to accelerate, right? And ensure that you can make accurate payout. So how do you see this technology evolving? Partly when you start looking at improving the customer experience, making sure you are driving trust and transparency, whilst also delivering operational efficiencies.
Sure. And your partners are going to drive you to do that, right? Our carrier partners and who we work with, Tokyo Marine HCC, which is one of our main partners on our Grid Protect product, who are amazing. They're a company that's been around for hundreds of years. They do incredible work in the space. It was really important for us to find good partners that would make sure that we always strive to do best by the customer, best by the product, and best by the bottom line, right? We need to be profitable. No insurance company can survive without being profitable at the end of the day. The reason that we chose to build all of our technology in-house from a system platform standpoint One of the main pieces is really around security, right? We need to maintain our own level of security. I want that to be on me and on my co-founder and on our organization. We still work with partners and we integrate APIs and we do all the great things that you can do with technology, but the core platform, the foundation of what we built, we always were dead set on us owning it, because we need to control that technology so that as new components come and new technologies emerge, we can integrate with the things that are going to have the best amount of impact on our business and the most amount of impact on our customer and the most amount of impact on our partnerships and relationships, so that we can build trust and make sure that as we grow and as we see how things react and how our models change and how we monitor the grid and how we do all the things we do for our customers to make sure, as you said, it evolves. You're never going to get it right. Like, no large language model is 100% accurate, no matter how much data it has. The whole point is, how fast can you adopt the new things that are coming out of those models and retrain old data and understand what those impacts are over time? That's the piece that's really important. And for us, we've just been able to do that faster, controlling as much of our technology in-house as possible. Because anytime you're waiting on somebody else, you're on their timeline, not your timeline. And that can become very problematic for a startup at times.
Yeah. And so for you, what are the biggest opportunity, maybe some hurdles you've seen or encountered when you start looking at leveraging cloud infrastructure to support resilience? You mentioned security, and develop secure operational environments. What are the things you've learned through your journey as you have actually started using cloud infrastructure and using some of the latest technology which is out there?
Yeah, so data is dirty and storage is expensive,
Yeah.
right? There's so much data out there, right? So it's, what do you buy? What do you license? How do you store it? How do you use it? How do you clean it? There's all these different questions. And I'll take this back again to the team, right? We have 6 people on the team at Adaptive right now. Our head of data science is somebody who we trust, who's amazing, who's very good at what she does. Our CTO is incredible, has worked in the industry for a long time and is credible what he does. Our head of marketing knows how to talk to customers, knows how to talk to agents. Same with our head of distribution, same with partnerships. The most important critical piece for us in the early days for Adaptive was bringing in the professionals that understand their vertical and know how to work with all the other pieces within the company. Because as we're growing and as we're this young, right, as a startup, it's important to have the right people tell us where we need to actually focus and what they feel is going to work best for the types of products that we're trying to build at that point in time. And that's been critical for us. And I've seen it now happen time and time again over the last 18 months where, we've made the right decisions. We haven't made all the right decisions, but there's been very important times where, we've decided on one product versus another and it's been the right choice. Or we've decided to build something versus buying something and utilized AI for a portion. We've utilized large data for one portion, and then having the right people to know how to sift through that and then combine those things together has been, I would say, one of the most critical pieces to our success so far.
Yeah. Emerging tech, moving to emerging risk, right? Talk about climate. We have cyber, we have, supply chain disruption, amongst others. So how do you see technology, driven insurance solution, taking advantage of those? And also, how can we make sure as an industry we evolve, but also prepare for those threats?
Yeah, so this is resiliency, right? We've said it already a couple of times on this interview, right? It's around resiliency and it's around proactiveness. How do we use AI, data, and technology to help us predict how these things are going to happen over time, right? You've mentioned earlier that a lot of the models are outdated. They are, but there are some incredible models that exist out there that have predicted a lot of the things that have happened, right? We know these things can happen. What happened with Hurricane Helene in Western North Carolina last year was horribly catastrophic, but models predicted, and we knew that if that type of rain event ever happened there, what would happen, right? The wildfires in Southern California and the Palisades, horribly devastating and uprooted so many lives and were horrible for that part of the country. But everybody knew that that could happen. The models had shown that that could happen, and they knew exactly how and when and why it would happen when it did. And what you also see from those events is that the proactive nature of a lot of folks, a home that is properly fireproofed or a house or a business that is properly built to withstand a hurricane force wind or a flood, we have the capabilities and we have the technology to be able to protect ourselves against a lot of these things. Now, deploying that at scale in a country the size of the United States with almost 400 million people and the huge expanse that we have is very, very, very difficult to do. And in an industry around property risk, which is mainly where you see most parametrics focus, it's even harder. It's not like the auto industry where vehicles turn over constantly on a 3-year basis and you can add new technologies, right? If you have a house that was built in the 1960s, if you want to make it fully hurricane proof in Florida, you got to knock it down and rebuild it to the latest code. So how do we figure out the things that person who owns that house or owns a business that was built that long ago can actually make the upgrades and the changes that they need to build that proactive nature of protecting themselves against the type of events that can occur? Technology can do a lot to help in that and help predict what do we need to invest in? How do we need to invest in these things? What tools can we create and what investment vehicles can we create that allow people to do these things that will have a tremendous amount of impact on the insurance industry as a whole over the next 20 years.
What I was going to ask you next, actually, Mike, is, looking 5 years from now, adaptive, parametric is the new best things, right? Since sliced bread. So where do you see us going with parametric product? Where do you see us going when actually, as we are trying to build better resilience for big and small businesses? And the other part of the question, and what would you like to say to the business owner who may not yet understand the power of parametrics and being protected properly when he or she looks at resiliency?
Yeah, so first I will say that I want to see many, many more parametric companies like us, right? Obviously, I want to see Adaptive as a leader in 5 years and being one of the pioneering companies that pioneered parametric and an automated platform and an easy way for agents to ultimately access. But our success would be shown even more so by seeing many other parametric companies out there, because it means we were onto something and that it worked. And now everybody wants to get on that train. And it would be good for the industry. Parametric, again, does not typically make the customer whole. It's a gap coverage that allows somebody to get access to capital quickly. So the more products we have available, the better. As you know, and you've been around insurance, right? Reinsurance is a finite thing, right? Everybody gets capacity, but nobody has full capacity to write everywhere. There's areas of the country that we can't write in. There'll be competitors of ours that we would view as a direct competitor who I would love to do business with, because I know there's areas they can't write in that I can, and areas I can't write in that they can. I learned that very early on at Hippo. We worked with everybody, right? We worked with other insurance companies. They sold our product. We sold their product. This is the ecosystem that we talked about earlier, right? It'll be great for the consumer to have access to those types of products. What I would tell a business is, you're making an investment, a very, very large investment of your time, a lot of time of your savings, whether it's a business or a consumer. I would say take the time to understand your insurance products and really take the time to understand where you are investing your livelihood. If you're going to own a business, great. You should know what type of customer you're going to have and how much traffic flow you're going to have. And all those things are really important to your bottom line revenue. But if you're only focused on that and you've not focused on all of the different climate impacts that could happen based on your restaurant that you might be buying in Austin, how close are you to the river? What happens if there's a flood? How long are you going to be closed? If you don't focus on those things, those are the things that are likely going to impact you so much over time that are going to cause you to close your doors. So take the extra time to talk to an agent, take the extra time to actually have a conversation about what your risks truly are, so that you can make a better informed decision about, how you're going to protect yourself as things continue to evolve over time.
Yeah. I'm just echoing what you are saying, because, probably 40% of our listeners are from the United States, business owners, investors, corporates. And so, a call to action to actually be curious as to how you can protect your business and look at new solutions like parametric insurance, which allows you to actually be resilient and ready if a risk occur and, affect your business.
Yep.
One thing I want to add, actually, Mike, is you and I, we are going to be meeting each other in Vegas at ITC Vegas on between the 14th and the 16th of October. So who would you like to meet when we are going to be in the US? Well, when I'm going to be in the US. You're already in the US, but when we are going to be in Vegas to meet 10,000 people.
Yes. So ITC, I call ITC the Super Bowl of conferences for us, right? It's a great opportunity for everybody in the industry to get together. It's the most exhausting 4 days of the year for me, but it's amazing. For me personally, it is just meeting other industry professionals, other CEOs and founders of these businesses. I'll likely be talking to a lot of investors. Obviously, Adaptive is, we're a startup. We'll be raising more money and would love to tell folks more about what the future vision of the company is ultimately going to be. Our whole team will be there, so it's a great opportunity for our marketing folks and our product folks and our CTO and others to actually be out, meeting with different business types. But it's a great opportunity to talk about all the new things that are coming to insurance and have everybody in the same, place. So my guess is my schedule will be filled with a lot of conversations with investors, a lot of conversations with other founders, and then always the product companies that are there are always trying to get as much time in front of you to show you their great new product and tool as they possibly can.
I'm excited because we have quite a few investor friends. As you know, some of our investor friends, we are going to build a secret pre-event on the 14th of October. And a lot of those delegates and people I'm working with on this event are investors who I'm sure will be really looking forward to meeting you. Mike,
awesome.
If we want to know more about you, if we want to know more about Adaptive, where should we go?
Go to our webpage. It's the easiest, adaptiveinsurance.com. You can access our broker page. You can access the contact us. I'm on LinkedIn. I usually respond to folks pretty fast. So if you want to hit me on LinkedIn, by all means, please look me up on LinkedIn. Would love to have a conversation. I've always loved to talk to folks about insurance. I'm a nerd when it comes to insurance. It's an important thing. The world goes round and round because there's an insurance product behind almost every single thing that happens on this planet on a daily basis, and it's a very needed thing. So reach out. Would love to talk about what we're doing. If you want to start a company and you got insights or things you want to learn, we're always here to help. Like, that's just what we do. Pay it forward as much as possible.
Well, Mike, looking forward to seeing you just in a few months. And thank you so much for joining me today and providing so much insight around parametric, but also adaptive. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Sabine. I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scouting for Growth. Please subscribe, share with friends, and leave a 5-star rating. Your rating is so valuable. I review all of them, and my team help me adapt content to meet your needs. Also, connect with me on my preferred channels. I am a B2B growth expert, so you will find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads, and X as well as Blue Sky. All information available below. Until next, keep scouting for growth.